Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Rock Bottom Airsoft. It's good to see you again, and as always, if it's your first time here, then it is good to see you. I hope you'll stick around. Okay, so we're on to our normal weekend discussion of all things Airsoft related. As many of you know that follow the channel, we always upload video every weekend, looking at all aspects of Airsoft, from gear to tech, to replica reviews, to kit reviews, and everything in between. And midweek we'll usually upload a gameplay video. As many of you may know, I'm currently injured, so I haven't been able to get out to games quite as often as I'd like to. Not had a game for a while, which is a shame. However, I do normally upload a regular weekday video. I'll try and keep that going with the footage I've got as much as possible. So with that in mind, if you are enjoying my series of videos, then please do subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss any of my uploads. But with that out of the way, we can get into what we're going to look at today. Now, what I'm going to look at today is a bit on batteries again, but more on one specific type of battery, and that's this Titan lithium-ion battery. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I've had a couple of comments on the channel and on social media asking me how I feel about this Titan lithium-ion battery now that I've been using it for quite some time. I've had it quite a few months now. I've used it in a lot of skirmishes, and I was asked for feedback, on long-term feedback from a couple of comments. So I thought it'd be interesting to see what my thoughts were on it now I've been living with it, as it were, for quite some time. So we're going to run through that today. So, what are we looking at? Just a quick rundown, really. I'm not going to go into the full details of the battery again. You can see that in my previous video. I'll leave a link in the description to the previous video I did on different types of battery, including lithium-ion. What I would like to say as well, before we go well into this video, I don't have any affiliation with Titan as such. I'm not really looking at that particular brand. It's just that's the brand I chose to go with when I decided to test out a lithium-ion battery. There are other brands of lithium-ion battery. However, Titan has been the one that I've used and the one I have experience with. And to cut a long story short, I'm quite impressed with it, but I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. I've got a LiPo battery here as well, which I'll go into the details of why I've got that in just a little while. So just a recap for a couple of details of why lithium-ion is such an attractive proposition for us in Airsoft. Well, a few of the pros is they don't puff up. They're a hard case cell. Many of you may know, a battery is made up of a number of cells, and the cells in lithium-ion batteries, particularly in these Titan batteries, the Titan batteries are a hard case cell. Each individual cell is hard case, so you don't get any puffing. These batteries won't puff up. There's no memory in the battery. You can charge the battery up at any point. Doesn't matter if you run it halfway out and then charge it up, or run it all the way to empty and then charge it up. It won't retain a memory in the battery. The mention there about running it until it's completely empty, that is another advantage of a lithium-ion battery. These Titan batteries are lithium-ion. You can run these batteries until they're completely empty. A LiPo battery, you don't want to run it completely dead. If you do, you will damage the battery, and it may be unusable, it may become unstable, and that's when you get puffing and fires and all sorts of nasty things. You shouldn't do if you look after your LiPo batteries. Your LiPo batteries should be very safe. I'm not saying they're unsafe. I'm just stating that for a more novice user, or for someone who maybe hasn't got the time to care for these lithium polymer batteries, the lithium-ion batteries, you can run them until they're completely dead and it won't damage the battery at all. You can charge it back up to full and it'll be good to go for another day, which is another thing about them. Storage charge is not such a major issue with these. With a lithium polymer battery, you normally want to put them on storage charge, which again, I go into details about all these things in some of my previous videos, which you can see regarding battery tech. But with a lithium-ion, you don't need to worry about storage mode. When you get home from the game, you can put it away in your battery safe and leave it. That's the end of that. Charge it up before your game, you're good to go. You can store it fully charged if you want. The other advantage of these is they're very high capacity. As you can see, for the size of this battery, this is a nunchuck battery compared to this 11.1 stick battery. But this battery is very high capacity, 3000 milliamp hour compared to 1100 milliamp hour. Now, as explained in the other videos I've done, the higher the milliamp hour, there's a bit more to it, but in general it means it's going to last you longer. The battery has more capacity, it's going to last a lot longer. So 3000 milliamp hour in a battery this size is frankly brilliant. It's absolutely spot on. I can use this battery in a skirmish and it'll last me the whole day, depending on how I'm playing. But I have never had a problem with this battery lasting me a whole day. So that's another advantage of lithium ion. They do tend to have very high capacities for the size. And they're less prone to damage because they are hard case cells. They're not soft. This lithium polymer, the cells are wrapped together with this plastic coating, and inside the cells are soft. So you're more liable to puncture it, break it. Mechanical damage is what we call it. And if you puncture one of these batteries, then you are very likely to end up with a fire. They will vent, and it is quite violent when they vent. So you have to be a bit more careful from a mechanical damage point of view with these batteries, whereas this battery is hard cased, you're less likely to puncture it and therefore cause a fire with it. You still don't want to try and puncture it, you want to take care with your batteries, but there's less likelihood of that happening with a hard case cell. Now, one of the downsides to lithium ion, as a lot of people have also said in the comments, is that you do get less output with a lithium ion battery. When we're referring to output, we're referring to the amount of current that can be drawn from the battery and the amount of current that the battery is capable of putting out when our motors and our AEGs demand it. Now, the C rating is what would normally be what we'd look at for the output of the battery. Again, there's a bit more to it. Your milliamp hour rating and your C rating combined puts to the current that they can put out. However, as a very brief idea, the higher the C rating, the more current the battery is capable of putting out. You'll have continuous C rating and you'll have burst C rating for those initial startups on our motors. In this case, the lithium ion batteries have a far lower C rating than a lithium polymer battery, which is one of the reasons that lithium polymer is so popular in things like the RC world, where they need a high amount of current for the big motors that they run. And it's also popular with a lot of airsofters, particularly a lot of people who modify their replicas for high speed builds, high torque builds, that kind of thing. They'll want a very capable battery that can put out a lot of current without suffering any problems because of that, and can run the motors as they want them to. Now, there is issues I have with that. I've tried this, if you watch my previous video that I mentioned earlier, where I test this on various replicas. I didn't really notice much of a difference between this and a 7.4 volt lithium polymer battery that had a much higher C rating than this on one of my 12:1 gear set custom builds with a high torque motor. This provided plenty of power for it to function how I like. Now, going off 11.1 batteries, I'm trying to move away from 11.1, as many of you may know who follow me on the social media platforms. I prefer to run a 7.4 and try and get my gear ratios and the work I do in the gearbox to allow me to have the rate of fire that I desire. I don't really work with dual sector gear much, so you know, for me, depending on your playstyle as well, this puts out more than enough current for any of the replicas I own to function well within the parameters that I want them to function at. So that's just from my perspective. Now, I've had other comments on there where people have mentioned about that it's just a bunch of cells strapped together, such as Sony lithium ion cells. That might be the case, I don't know, I haven't pulled this apart and checked. What I do know is if that is the case, it is obviously going to be a number of cells, because any battery is a number of cells. There are only a certain number of manufacturers that make cells, and if these are indeed Sony cells or Samsung cells, I have no complaints there. They are a good OEM to make batteries. I would be happy with that. So from a branding issue for Titan, these batteries have been absolutely fine for me. This battery, should I say, anyway. Okay, now I've been using this particular battery, as I mentioned, And I will be honest with you, I have used this in every single game since I first bought it at some point or another. What I tend to do these days is, if this will fit in my replica, since I've started using it, whatever replica I'm using that day, if this will fit, I will use it. I hardly ever use my lithium polymer batteries anymore. The reason I show this lithium polymer battery is because of my ARP9. My ARP9, as many of you know with ARP9s, it runs much better on an 11.1 volt battery. I don't currently have an 11.1 Titan battery, and I especially think it'd be difficult to find a Titan 11.1 that would fit in the ARP9, which we'll have a look at briefly at the end. So the only time I exclusively use lithium polymer batteries is in my ARP9, purely because of the size issues. Everything else, every other replica I've had, from my Sterogs through to my MP5, through to every AR I have had no issue with fitment with this particular battery. This is a 3000 milliamp hour, 7.4 volt lithium ion battery from Titan. If you like this particular size of battery, this one starts at approximately 33 British pounds. I'll put a link in the description as to where you can get one of those. They go all the way up to a phenomenal amount of capacity, such as 6000 milliamp hour. You can pay up to 90 British pounds though for one with 6000 milliamp hour of capacity. That's double this capacity. And if you're wanting an 11.1 volt battery with the same capacity as this, a 3000 milliamp hour 11.1 volt Titan lithium ion battery, you're going to be looking at around about 45 British pounds, and that will get you into an 11.1 version of this battery. It's slightly larger for the reasoning the cells, obviously with it being 11.1 instead of 7.4. However, you know, 3000 milliamp hour and 11.1, it is great. I mean, that is a good capacity to have. And yes, pricing is one of the other drawbacks to a Titan lithium ion battery. Compared to a lithium polymer, they're a little bit more expensive. But the reason I've been sticking with it again is, even though it's more expensive, I only need one of these in my replica that day, and every time I've been for my skirmish games, that has lasted me all day. Every gameplay video that I've uploaded since I got this battery, apart from the ARP9, has been running on this 3000 milliamp hour 7.4 lithium ion battery. My Socom 16 fits no problem. All of my ARs, it's been running on those, no problem. They do other shapes. This one's a crane stock. They also do a stick version. They also do brick batteries for fitting into pet boxes. Again, the sizes are on their website, which I'll put a link to. But the sizes, you should fit most of them in a standard AR buffer stock. You shouldn't have a problem. Most replicas they'll probably fit in. It's just the smaller battery compartments you may have issues with. Now, that pretty much covers what I think of it. I think that speaks volumes, that ever since I got it, every skirmish I've been to where I've been using an AEG, whether that's been a standard replica, a completely custom high stress build, I've been using this battery. I have, you know, most of my replicas, as many of you will know that follow me, I have done work to them of some sort. All of my replicas are Deans. I usually strip them down and re-shim and re-grease. But even the replicas I have that are completely standard, I've been using that in. The replicas I have that have just had a re-shim and a re-grease, and you know, they've been using that in. And the replicas I have with very strong springs, low ratio gears, high torque motors, high speed motors. One of them's even running currently the Warhead motor, the brushless motor. They've all been run using this battery in my gameplays ever since I got it. So I've never stopped using it. Now I'm happy to say that it still performs just the same as it did the day I bought it. It still lasts me a whole day's gameplay, has no problem holding charge whatsoever. I use this battery for testing when I'm doing work on a replica, and the reason I do that is because it's just so much easier than lithium polymer. Now, like I said, a lot of people, it might not suit the needs. But if you don't need all that extra current output from a lithium polymer, which again, I'd argue that in my case I haven't, but if you do, then fair enough. And if you prefer lithium polymer, that's absolutely fine. The cheaper there are advantages to them, as we discussed previously. But for my long-term feedback on this battery, I'm really happy with it. It's worked for me in every scenario I've put it in. It's had an absolute hammering at every game I've been in. It gets run flat, it gets run halfway through, it gets charged back up fully. I've had no issues with this battery whatsoever, and I would strongly recommend it. In fact, I've recommended them to all my friends at my home site, Titan Airsoft, a lot of whom have got them themselves, and they're quite happy with them as well. So what I would say is the upshot of that is the only things that I would suggest, which is for something like this. This is the ARP9. Many of you that follow me will recognise this replica. I use this in a lot of games, and I don't use a battery extension on it. I use the standard battery compartment, which this battery will fit in. Just as many of you know, it's a squeeze to get it in, but it will fit. A crane stock battery such as the one in front of us there will not fit. It requires an 11.1 battery. Now, the shortest stick battery that I could find from Titan that was 11.1 was 19.7 centimeters long. It is a big difference. I mean, if they're saying 19.7 centimeters, I don't think that's going to fit at all. This current lithium polymer battery is about 98 centimeters. It's about 98 millimeters, so about 9.8 centimeters. 197 millimeters, that's a little bit more, isn't it? So yeah, it's considerably bigger. I would say that this is the trick that we need. If it was just one of those, that would fit no problem. So that would be what I'd be hoping for. I'll maybe message Titan themselves, or send an email to them and see if they come back to me to see if they do have a lithium-ion battery in their range that would fit in a standard ARP9 replica. And what I would tell you now is if they do an 11.1 volt lithium-ion battery that would fit in this replica without any issues, just the same as this lithium polymer will, and run the replica fine, I'd be happy to review it. And if I was happy with it and it ran it just as well as this does, then that would be me done with lithium polymer, which is quite a broad statement, but it's just ease of use for me. I'm a regular player. It just makes it so much easier using this. And as I've only been using this battery, I only need that one for a day's gameplay. If I had two of them, then that's going to last me easily. So in the long-term affordability stakes, there's not much to it. It cost me more initially to buy it, but I don't need as many of them. So there you go. Long-term review. The battery still functions as good as the day I got it. I'm still happy with it. I use it in all my replicas now. I exclusively use this battery most of the time. It's very rare I would use my lithium polymer batteries anymore. Again, some of you may require differences and different performance from your batteries, and if you do, then that's great. All I'm doing here is stating for my style of play and for the replicas that I build, the Titan lithium-ion battery is more than enough power output for my requirements, and because of the ease of use of it, I just can't fault it, and I really, really like it, and I will continue to use them. Whether I use a different brand of lithium-ion battery, I don't know. Maybe I'll give them a try, but I'm quite happy with the Titan one. So there you go. That's my follow-up review of Titan lithium-ion batteries. I hope you found that interesting. I hope you find it useful. If you're on the fence about whether to give lithium-ion a go, I hope it helps you on that one. But like I say, I really like mine, and I've used it plenty of times. The only thing that keeps me on lithium polymer at the moment is having 11.1 batteries for certain replicas and having them as small as this, having them fit in the replica, particularly the ARP9. So I hope you did enjoy the video. If you did enjoy it, then please drop a like on it. If you have any suggestions or comments or any opinions on what we've discussed here, then do drop me a comment. I'll always respond to comments. I may not get back to you straight away, but I will always respond to you. And if you, as we mentioned earlier, if you are enjoying my series of videos, then do please subscribe to the channel and then you don't miss any of my uploads. But apart from that, until next time, thank you very much for watching.